Hello, and welcome to the Mothers of All Crime. This is a podcast where we deep dive into mothers involved in infamous crimes and scandals. I'm Monica, and this is Crystal.
Hello, Monica.
Hey, how are ya?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. So excited about our topic.
I know. So today is an interesting one, which about to get into some. I feel like we're gonna jump all over the place, but today is twin flames. The
Yes.
Jeff and Shaleia Divine, and I think I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm not entirely sure.
I think so, but there are definitely multiple pronunciations that I've heard for. I think it's Shalia, but I've definitely heard Shalea as well. I'm gonna go with Shaleia because that's how I read it when I look at it.
I do too, but by the end of this, I might be calling her something completely different. So we'll find out.
Well, I may call her Megan, but we can get into that.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Mhm. So I think
totally. So,
the idea of just a twin flame, when you hear that term, I feel like it's kind of gotten away from the original idea. But when you hear just the term, not thinking about the leader and the organization, what does that term kind of say to you?
so my only familiarity with twin flames outside of the twin flame universe is I've been to some crystal stores and like tarot card reading places, and they always have a line of candles or perfumes or whatever potions called twin flames of some kind. So
Hmm.
I always kind of just associated it with like I don't know, like new agey kind of crystals. I don't know that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I totally
like
agree.
soulmate though. If like someone asked me what it meant, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Soulmate.
So that's, I think, what a lot of people agree with. And we've even mentioned twin flames in past episodes for people who have been kind of following along. And we will probably mention it again because it is a very common term. But it actually started back in the 1800s by like an English novelist. And
I saw that.
yeah, she basically is just talking about, like you said, soulmates, two lives coming together, just really that like external force that brings two people together and like your true one person in the world. And you're about to go on this life journey together. But I think as time went on, like you said, it moved into more of that like witchy vibe or
hmm
spiritual with the tarot readings and Reiki and psychics. And you have all of those aspects that you're going to see twin flame a lot. And that is a lot of where I think Jeff and Shalia take that motivation, that following that belief that people already have and just delve right into it.
Yeah, because it kind of is like a buzz term where you don't really have to know what it means to kind of get it,
Hmm.
and it has like instant recognition of pretty much what it is, which
Yeah.
I do think is great for like naming an organization. So it works,
Oh, it was brilliant.
and it
So,
does seem to be a popular search term,
oh, yeah.
driving
Because
a lot of traffic.
about if you're someone who really wants to find love, they really want to find that person that like every Disney movie, every little girl grows up is like, I'm gonna find my Prince Charming. And you get to a point and you haven't found them yet, particularly
hmm
in this day and age, what do? You go to the internet and you start looking up how to find love and all those things. And I think that's how they really attracted so many people in such a short amount of time.
Definitely. But I mean, we should probably start at the beginning with the originator of this idea in this context, which, in my opinion, is Shalia. I think that this was her idea, the twin flame of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Shalia, her original name, which you hinted at earlier, was Megan.
hmm
And she really was a very spiritual person. She was a Reiki practitioner. She read tarot cards. I've read things that she argued that she was a psychic.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very committed to that lifestyle. And she messaged Jeff, um, who has had many names. So I think his original name was Jeffrey Agan. Again, who knows?
Yes.
She messaged him online, like so many people do, and basically very aggressively hit on him and like was very sexual with him. And eventually they met in person.
Well, you got to shoot your shot sometimes, and she definitely did. She was the pursuer. She saw him online, had to have him, and she basically followed him to Hawaii.
Mm-hmm. Because he was in Hawaii at the time. He had changed his name to Ender, marketing himself to
Mhm.
be like a lifestyle guru. And I think, I don't know, part of me thinks that she did see something she wanted and went after it. And the other part of me thinks she saw an opportunity where he already was going down this kind of guru life coaching avenue to make money, that with her side, and then she starts kind of propositioning like, hey, let's build this like together. I think she kind of saw this opportunity where he has a degree in business, he understands how to do it, why not do something together?
Yeah, and I think that he definitely posted a lot of content where he seemed to be speaking with a lot of knowledge, a lot of financial knowledge. He was very into Warren Buffett and very into investing and get rich quick kind of schemes, which can be
Mhm.
intoxicating, especially if you're just watching someone online. And Shaleia, who at the time was Megan, her mother had passed away. She'd grown up in a conservative family in Canada. I think she was just looking for something different, and she, I agree, thought that there was an opportunity and this was going to be a game changer for her. And I think for both of them, this was the energy they both needed. They really do balance each other out in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah. And in 2014 is kind of when they started to take off as a couple in business,
Hmm.
where they started a YouTube channel, like 90% of the modern influencers and cult leaders um, awakened intimacy. They had multiple websites that promoted everything from just tarot readings to being able to heal someone from cancer and other diseases.
Hmm.
And it like instantly started to make me feel bad because they're going after people that are vulnerable. And that's going to be a pattern that we're going to keep seeing with this group. But you have people who just want love or health and are vulnerable to, you get down to your last option, then here they come, Jeff and Julia being like, hey, we can help you, when there's nothing backing up their ability to help you.
Yeah, I think they've found out that people in desperate situations are willing to spend money, and that became their prime audience.
Oh, yeah. Everything came down to money with these two. Everything.
Absolutely. I don't
Um,
think Shalia would agree, but I think Jeff would. I
oh,
think
yeah.
Jeff knows it's about the money.
Jeff
Maybe not now, but
is so, oh god, I can't even think of the word I want, but just so in your face about, look at this Porsche, look at this massive house, look at this land, that like, just wants you to know that he has money and doesn't want you to think about the fact that the money came from suffering people.
yeah, right. So, I mean, we should definitely get into Twin Flames universe and their Facebook group and their YouTube channel, which is how they really started marketing themselves.
Hmm.
And they came up with some classes, which is also a very popular thing for people who are life coaches, which is essentially what they were, is they're life coaches, and they were selling their classes online. And these classes were very, very expensive. They're all in angel numbers, so it'll be like $5,555 or
Hmm.
$7,777. But I saw some that were upwards of $8,000, $9,000 for these classes, and these are all still available now. But
Oh,
there
this,
are,
this group is alive and well. That is for sure. Um, I think from what I recall in looking at their website, their base package is $222 a month and recommended to take at least 1 year of only that course, not including the books and the workshops and the coaching, all of those extra things that are also going to be involved. Um, but one thing that I think is interesting that they did, which is honestly quite smart, and you're going to see it in a lot of cults, that they use something called the mirror exercises. And
oh yeah,
each group calls them something different. But in this context, they basically, you have a statement or an issue, and you replace your pronoun with them or you or he, whatever, and use I. And you're basically taking and putting that responsibility on yourself for whatever is happening. And you're the cause of whatever bad is happening in your life, which is a dangerous thing to start doing.
yes. And some of their members are doing mirror exercises like, my husband is hitting me, and they reverse the pronouns and they're saying, I am hitting me. Why am I hitting me? Why am I causing myself pain? Because everything that happens to you is your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when I really started getting the cult detector vibe going off, because the mirror exercise, it's called something different, but Teal Swan has a version of that, and that's where I'd heard it. It's called the mirror process for her, and it's a similar kind of concept. And it's also very similar to what Scientology teaches, with everything being your own fault and your own control.
Mm-hmm.
It's a type of accountability that is very popular in these kind of extreme groups.
Yeah. And it's definitely a control tactic because you start teaching your people how to police themselves,
Hmm.
where there's always going to be a need for the group. There's always going to be a need for the leader to tell you how to fix it. Because if everything's always your fault, they're going to have the answers on how to make it better, how to not have those things keep happening to you.
Right. And they have the ultimate prize. They have the harmonious union. They
Hmm.
have your soulmate. They have them. You can't let them get away because they have him. So if you just follow the path and you continue to improve yourself, you will be rewarded with a lifetime of happiness and love.
Yep.
It's a pretty good deal.
For only a couple $1,000s a day.
Just what, but what is money compared to finding your twin flame?
Yes. And
That's
that's their
that's the whole
market.
thing.
Hmm.
Clearly, it's priceless.
And if
And
you
like
don't
you
have the
mentioned,
money, take out a credit card.
well, there was also a solution that Jeff came up with down the line, where he started having people work for him, volunteer for him in exchange for free classes, which
Yes.
is also a very common tactic in coercive control groups and multi-level marketing, which this is a huge confluence of those two things.
Yeah.
This is essentially just it's a pyramid scheme.
Oh yeah. There's so many things. I gotta give the two of them credit. Is they drew a little bit from every kind of group and just mushed it all into one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like shit started to really hit the fan when they got to borrowing from Christianity. It's gotten really weird now, but it definitely, they've run through a lot of different cults and religions and philosophies. Definitely Nexium, I think, is, like you've said before, is a huge comparison point for
Yeah.
this group.
Because
And
with Nexium, you have that coaching. So one thing that they started
exactly.
implementing was coaching, and you could take classes to become a coach and help other people work towards their union, finding their twin flame, improving their personal relationship with them. And you could get coaches underneath you and then continue going up the ladder, becoming a higher level coach, which is very similar to Nexium. Where in their group, you do the same thing. Train other people and help them through some process while you're continuing up the straight path and becoming higher and more empowered yourself. But with that, you have to pay people. So people who are coaches originally were getting, I think it was $60 a coach, and they got to keep all that money. And that's how the people who started out early as coaches were making all of this money and were shown as success stories. Look, if you follow us and you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to make all this money like this person and this person and me. Look at like Jeff, look at my fancy car, my house, and all of this. And there's your MLM. Keep bringing people in, the more money you're going to make.
And it definitely worked for the people at the top of the pyramid.
Oh, yeah.
It started to not work so well for the coaches, who I think now are making 10% of the profit instead of 100%. And then there, of course, are the people who are just volunteering, so they're not making anything.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard because when you have these people, their goal originally, 99% of them who came in, was either self-improvement or finding true love.
Mm-hmm.
And normal people who find someone that you meet someone, maybe you go out, you have a conversation, and they're like, you know what, I'm actually not interested. Thank you for your time. 9 normal people go, okay, that's fine, and they move on to someone else. This group, however, if your twin flame or your Jeff and Shaleia decide this is your twin flame, you are to pursue that person relentlessly. Like, it doesn't matter if they say, no, I'm not interested in you. That's a block and you need to move past that. And
Oh my gosh. There's
they're,
so many examples of that.
yeah, they're
So
encouraging people
many.
to harass people. Like, there were restraining orders taken out against members of the Twin Flame universe because they just wouldn't leave someone alone. And it
Or
was both sexually aggressive, verbally aggressive. Like, it was just a lot for anyone. And I feel awful for the people that, like, were external. Like, if you're a member of Twin Flame and that Jeff's like, yeah, George is your twin flame who you work with. This poor man has no idea what's happening. And now you're just aggressively hitting on him every day.
that's a good point. I did think that it seemed in the early days of Twin Flames that people were coming already with their twin flame picked out, and then
Mm-hmm.
it progressed to Jeff and Shaleia deciding who your twin flame was from within the group. But it's definitely harder to control these outside people who have their own thoughts and opinions, and often other relationships that they are totally in. Like
Yes.
poor Ryan Gosling, who is getting
Oh, I was
stalked and
just going to say that.
harassed
I was
by
just
his
going to
twin
say.
flame when he is married and he does not know you. Like,
Listen, I also would like Ryan Gosling to be my twin flame, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Ryan, if you're listening, we are your twin flames. We are here and we're your
Let us
twin flames.
know.
But if you don't want to be twin flames with us, it's okay. We'll let it go.
We will accept this
I'm not
one.
going to follow you. I'm not going to follow you around and hope you change your mind. I don't think that's going to work. I'm going to let him think I've forgotten about it, and then he can come crawling to me.
Oh,
That's the plan.
that one just baffled me. It just because it's just insane. But then at the same time, when you have this group supporting that idea, you have people around you like, yes, absolutely, keep going. You're going to break it down. Look at this one example that it totally worked with. Like, it's that energy that, like, you have all these people telling you that it's good. That would be really
Hmm.
hard to be like, you know what, I'm going to stop. Like,
Definitely. And I think for a lot of these people, I mean, I watched so much content about twin flames in the last few weeks, but there was someone who was saying that she had a boyfriend and she was really, really in love with him and she thought that he was her twin flame before she actually knew about Twin Flames Universe, that he was her soulmate. And he cheated on her and broke up with her. And then she was Googling why she couldn't get over him. And instead of finding something that said, because you're hurt and you got rejected, and that really sucks, and that's actually normal that you feel this way. She found Twin Flames Universe, and they just completely encouraged her in the wrong direction, away
Mhm.
from any kind of healing or growth, into you have to get him back, even though he treated you so badly already and rejected you and doesn't want you. He's obviously your twin flame. It makes
Yeah.
no sense.
It kind of felt like listening to different testimonies of people that originally, whatever person that let's be honest, the most of the people in this group were female. It's just the reality of it. And
Oh, yeah, vast majority.
um when it started, it kind of felt that whatever female came in, whatever man that they happened to have a crush on, mild interact, pretty much the last person they talked to, that was the person that Jeff was like, you know what? Them. Yeah, you're right. Like, there was no rhyme or reason why he was saying that is your twin flame, other than supporting whoever they liked last, or even in some occasions talked to last.
Even people who have just recently messaged them on Facebook.
Yes,
Like, well, obviously, he's your twin flame.
obviously.
He
He
wouldn't message you
clearly
otherwise.
would never have talked to you otherwise, right? It just makes
Yeah,
no sense.
for sure. He wouldn't have held the door open for you if you weren't his twin flame. Sure, you don't know him, but follow him to his house. I don't care if he's been with his girlfriend for 14 years and they're having a second baby together. You have to talk to him. Like, this is it.
Yeah. And
They acted like there was no option.
none. And it's so hard because it's not funny, but it's just at the same time so far-fetched at times. But I can also again see if you are in a really vulnerable place and you have all these hype people around you, it makes sense why people would fall into it. And they started developing soul families. So not only
Mm,
would you have your twin flame, who's your soul partner in life, you had soul relationships like soul sisters, soul brothers, like building a soul family who are all members of the community. And if you had relationships with people outside of that soul family, that was going to drain out your energy and actually risk your relationships, and you might not be able to get your twin flame because you're too busy maintaining other relationships in your life, like your parents.
right. Well,
So
they're not supportive. They're
right,
not supportive.
again,
They've got to
great
go.
way to take out those external voices that are like, maybe stalking Ryan Gosling is not a good idea. um nope,
You
get
don't
rid of
need that kind of negativity, you know?
it. And it's just, again, not encouraging people to not listen to law enforcement, not expect, basically just no respect for anything else other than the one true love of your life that Shaleia and Jeff decide for you.
Yes. And this also applies to people in relationships that they've selected, that Jeff and Celia have decided you're twin flames. When one or both parties are abusing each other, that's also just a kink that needs to be worked out. That's not a real deal breaker problem.
Mm-hmm.
You
It's
know,
something that
someone's
you're doing to make them behave
right.
that way.
My favorite was when the the feminine partner was not being feminine enough, and that's why the masculine partner had to assault her to assert their dominance. So it's really just about keeping that perfect balance of masculine and feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think that victims of domestic violence could learn so much from this.
Yeah,
It
and not
makes
to
tons of
mention,
sense.
if you are a masculine woman, you can drain masculine energy from the man you're with, and it could actually make them gay.
Ugh, I hate when that happens.
Don't you?
Yeah.
And,
Well,
'cause
we're
we're
gonna have
not.
to get into the masculine feminine of it all, the divine
Yeah.
masculine and feminine.
So there is an e-course called the Divine
Hmm.
Masculine and Divine Feminine. And this was really kind of those stereotypical gender roles very much enforced and believed in with this group. There is a very
Yes.
much a place for the man and very much a place for the woman. And a lot of it comes down to sex. And
Yes.
they kind of preach the idea that as a couple, you guys should A, be having sex every day, but also anytime that the man wants to have sex, you are expected to have sex, regardless if you want to or not. Doesn't matter. If they want to have sex, you guys are having sex, is one of the many points that they start to push, which, like
Cue a
you
clip.
mentioned, is dangerous.
Cue a clip of Jeff literally describing a scene, which to me sounds like marital rape. Like there was so many videos of him saying that there would be points that Shaleia wouldn't want to have sex, and he would just be aggressively kissing her and throwing her on the bed, and oh, what do you know? We're gonna have sex anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's illegal, sir. That's not okay. That you are abusing your twin flame here.
Yeah.
I
And
know
he
it's,
just laughs
the
when
mirror
he does it.
exercise, but
Just laughs. He thinks it's funny.
yeah,
hmm
so funny. He thinks he's hilarious. And I think that he is a charismatic leader, more so than Shaleia, who I do think Shaleia is actually, I don't think that he could do this without her, but I think
hmm
that he is the charismatic narcissist that keeps it running. And he
Yeah.
probably does more of the day to day work for the organization, but I think people feel safer with Shaleia, especially since this is such a female organization that everyone feels like, well, he can't be that bad. He can't be that crazy because look, he has like a wife with him.
hmm
She wouldn't put up with it if it was a real problem. So he must be fine.
Yeah. I think you're right where he is definitely that because every group needs a charismatic leader. That's just every cult has one. But I think she's the brains behind it all. I think she's the one that kind of started coming up with the idea on how to avenue everything. And Jeff does
Hmm.
more of the preaching and the business side of it. Because very soon after, he decides he doesn't want to pay taxes anymore. Very openly says it, has people starting to do research about how to avoid paying taxes, and he decides that they're going to convert to the Church of Union and become a religion. Because why not?
That's where I got real
Another
Scientology
Scientology
vibe.
moment.
So Scientology. It's so L. Ron Hubbard. Like, if you really want to make money, start a religion.
Oh yeah.
It's
L. Ron Hubbard would be so proud because they did this very quickly. Like compared to Scientology that took decades to get that finally like tax exempt status, Church of Union went they did pretty well. I think Hubbard would be very proud.
I think Elron would have done things a lot faster if he had the internet and he had social media
That's a good point.
the way that it is now.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
They had his source from the ground. It was much more difficult for the
Well, they
early
also
days of
had a
Scientology.
roadmap. Yeah, he was on his own. The
Right.
Divines over here are like, all right, we'll just take this. This worked for him. This worked for them. There we go. Problem solved. Like,
Well, I mean, when you steal from Scientology, you are stealing from so many religions that came before Scientology and, you know, science fiction as well.
yes.
So 'cause that's where they got all of their ideas from. And it's hard to say about like any kind of church or religious organization, like you're stealing these ideas because a lot of the ideas are going to be very similar to each other. And I think you could find a lot of parallels between most religions and other religions.
Mhm.
But it's very blatant the way that they're stealing and misappropriating things and twisting them to suit their own needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And so from here, they basically decide that Jeff is going to be Father Christ. He is the Jesus second coming.
Hmm.
And Shaleia is Mother Christ. And again, circling back, we have talked about Mother God before, and here's just another option. If Amy Carlson doesn't do it for you, now you have Shaleia Divine. like,
Yeah, it definitely was Mother God vibes too. I mean, Mother God wishes that she had this
Mhm.
kind of reach,
I know.
but
And
I think the substance use is different also.
that's true. Yeah, there's a lot less drugs in this group that we're aware of, at least.
Although, do you think Jeff maybe is on something?
Jeff has to be. Like, because if you look at his videos, the behavior is so erotic. Not erotic, erratic.
Maybe he's your twin flame.
Baby,
Shaleia,
Jeff,
back up.
coming for you. I was told that I don't need to worry about your wife.
All right. Well, I'm gonna stick with Ryan Gosling.
Oh, that's right. You know, I just need options.
Yeah. Well, you can have more than one twin flame, so
Yes,
that's also convenient.
that is convenient.
Very, very. It's very
And
convenient.
with that in mind, one of the next changes that they started to do is you had to have your twin flame had to be within the group. And
Hmm.
that was different from before. Now, if you're coming in, or maybe you had a false twin flame, the person you're with was wrong before. They never will say they made a mistake, but it was just wrong. um,
Hmm.
and they again start getting assigned new twin flames. And this is where I think Shaleia again comes in very quietly, because she is definitely more of the spiritual like leader here, while Jeff does that money angle. And I think with the Church of Union kind of growing and building, they needed to keep their people in. And what better way to do that than start kind of doing that preachy vibe and reassigning people who already support you? Makes it a lot easier
It
than
is easier.
an external person.
Yeah, because you can't control all the external people, which was a huge problem.
Right.
But
So,
but now they have a different problem because, like you said, most of their members are women.
hmm so what do you do?
What can you do if you need all of the relationships to be masculine and feminine, but you only have women, some of whom are lesbians, some of whom are not, most of whom have not met each other in person? Clearly, what you do is you assign all of these people into pairs, into twin flames, if you will, and then also assigned one woman to be the masculine and one woman to be the feminine. And then that escalated to one man, one woman, because now they're a Christian based organization.
hmm
And in order to achieve this, there was some forced transitions.
Yeah. And what is kind of lame on their part, like they have stolen so many things. They could have probably stolen something else, but they pretty much just took their business model and copy pasted it from straight couples onto gay couples. But there was no change if you kind of start taking a step back. And they, like you said, Christian organization, they started saying that bisexuality, it's not a real thing, doesn't
Hmm.
exist.
Right.
Homosexuality also doesn't exist. It's you are a flame in a body that
Right.
has a designated energy, either masculine or feminine. And without Shalia and Jeff telling you what your divine flame is, you would never know.
Right.
And they decided you are going to be a masculine, you are a masculine flame, excuse me, and
Right.
you need to start presenting that way. So if you, for example, there are plenty of videos and different examples that you can find, but there's some people that very feminine, never questioned their gender identity, never had any desire to change, are now ordered and following direction of cutting their hair, changing their name, dressing more masculine, even to the extreme of having surgeries and fully transitioning into a male, even though they never once have any history of wanting that. And I'm sure, don't get me wrong, there might be individuals here that this was something that they actually felt, and this was a good reason and support and that kind of encouragement. But at least for me, a lot of the people looking at these interviews, they are sitting there like, well, I never felt that way until they told me that. And that's why I
Yeah. Oh, it's a little too convenient. It's a
did.
little too easy to be like, well, we don't have enough men, so you, and you are the men now.
Right.
It's like a Shakespearean play where all the actors are men, so they just had some of them wear dresses and decided they were the female roles.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing here, because in this church where we're so, obsessed with the masculine and the feminine, we have to just make our existing members fit into this mold, and they are not having any luck appealing to men for this group, so they have to just use what they have.
Right. And I
That's
do think they
scary.
probably could have marketed it a little differently to get more men in, because I'm sure there are plenty of men that are also looking for love. And if they had maybe
That's
tried a different market, like how many websites are there to like mail order brides? Like, why don't
definitely.
you
I
just
think
go that way? Get the men. Like, why?
because I think they were appealing to the self-help communities and they were not appealing to the incels, which I agree was a huge oversight. They could have probably got a lot of traction with the incel community because they had so many women to offer and they are literally assigning them in marriage
Right, you don't have to do
and
any work.
forcing these red pill traditional ideals out of this weird hippy dippy cult. So it's I don't know how much this would have. I think it would have worked pretty well in a lot of the incel groups. I just don't think that they really marketed there. I think what they went to is self help. They went to Reiki groups. They went to LGBT support groups. They went, they were, when people were in relationships and got dumped, got cheated on, they were finding them through Google searches. But I think if you're Googling, why are all women awful and why do all women reject me, you're not going to get the twin flames.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I don't think they really tried very hard. I think that they were just using what came to them.
Yeah. So we obviously have mentioned a bunch of cults here. And for anyone who isn't familiar to a bunch of the ones we've talked about, some we've already talked about, like Mother of God, go back and listen to that. Others, like Nexium, we haven't got to yet, but it is on the list.
Hmm.
But one thing that Jeff did that is just fantastic is he did start to feel the heat that people were like, okay, this is a cult. This is not going well. External people started pretty much ruffling some feathers. So he decided to make a focus group and have them watch documentaries, so specifically Seduced and the Vow, which are about Nexium being a cult. And he had the people watching it make lists on how Jeff is not a cult leader. And it backfired.
Really bad. Really
And
bad.
they lost people over this, where people were like, that's what opened their eyes of being like, I need to leave. This is a cult. Like,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that that would be eye-opening for a lot of people, and it definitely was. And it's very ironic because the people who made those documentaries, which I loved, by the way,
so,
also went on to make Escaping Twin Flames.
mhm.
It's almost like Jeff manifested that.
Right? Oh, yeah. And
He's
it's
powerful.
bizarre. Like, you wouldn't, they know, and no one can tell me otherwise. They know what groups they're taking things from. They do, because they're not
They
creative.
do.
Why would you not have them watch a documentary on something that is less alike? Like, find a group that you may not have taken as much from and have them watch that documentary, because
So
it might not trigger them. Like,
So my thought on why he did that is that he was probably getting a lot of heat when those documentaries came out, like, seems like you're kind of giving off Keith Raniere vibes. Like some of the stuff you're doing feels similar to Nexium, and he's maybe getting comments online about that. And in
Mm,
true Jeff fashion, he's not going to pay someone or do research himself to come up with a counter argument. So he just had his volunteers as a test watching that and then hoping that they would come up with examples of how he is so different from Keith Raniere. That's what I think anyway. I think he just
hell.
didn't want to really look into it that much himself. And he's like, you guys will figure it out.
Yeah.
And then they did.
Right. And then they did.
Yeah. And then they did. And they're like, oh, snap. That is unfortunate. The likeness that's happening out of this.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's
Well,
really.
and then I think the next thing that's important for this group is MAP.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
MAP is a program that they developed, which stands for Mind Alignment Process. And this program was led by Dr. Christine Emmerich, who
Hmm.
is a lieutenant colonel in the Army, which they play on a lot. And basically, it was for people to address childhood traumas and PTSD and like heal through that within the Twin Flames universe. Again, bringing people in because they need more people.
Yeah. It's literally marketed as a cure for PTSD.
Yeah. And they were, a group of people were sent to basically infiltrate PTSD and trauma support groups and like chronically ill groups and things like that and do coaching. And there's people who are speaking out about it now that these coachings, they basically are suggesting to the person that they have these childhood traumas or certain experiences. And a lot of the time they aren't even true, but they're trying to convince you that they are. Or they're going to pivot off of someone who went to war or had a traumatic moment, and then we can fix you. Here's how. And it
Ugh.
actually is doing a lot of damage.
So much damage. This is so scary and potentially very, very harmful. And there's been at least one suicide as a result of this, which you can't say it maybe that it's a direct result, but I think that it was a contributing factor. And it just is a lawless country where all of these uneducated people, because Dr. Christie is not a medical doctor.
Mm-mm.
She has a degree in public health or something like that, which I'm sure she worked very hard to get and is very impressive, but it does not actually qualify you to do this kind of intensive therapy. This should be done under the supervision of someone who actually knows what they're doing, and it should be in a very controlled and regulated environment with checks and balances and procedures. And this was just throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks, and you can really damage people doing this kind of stuff. It's horrendous. I think this is maybe the worst thing that they did.
This is one of the things that made me very angry.
Yeah. I mean,
Because
the forced transitions is bad, but
this is a
to me,
different
this is
level.
worse.
Yeah, because now
Yeah.
they're going and specifically trying to pull in people that they are fully aware need help and are trying to get help. And that's when they step in to be like, how do we grow our business? And like you said, so Emmerich has a PhD, it's actually in public safety leadership.
Hmm.
The other people, so you can find this all on their website, which is still up and active. Um, so we have Jeff, who's the leader, and who markets himself on the website as an entrepreneur. Emmerich has her PhD, again, doctor. Emmerich, PhD in public safety and leadership. And then the team is Dr. Christina Fernandez, who is a PhD in biomedical engineering, and Jason Emmerich, who is the director of training, who has a degree in service management and culinary arts. And you guys, and they're telling you that they're going to help your mental health. Not one of them
Oh
has
my gosh.
any remotely close to mental health, medical training, psychiatry, nothing. Nothing.
I was already thinking when I just saw the vast amount of content that was produced by this group that this could be very damaging and create a very insular way of thinking because someone going through a crisis could really just fixate on this material and just watch hours and hours, thousands of hours of Jeff and Shaleia and get completely indoctrinated. But this is even a step further into that indoctrination. Like, we have the solutions to all of your problems, even your big, scary mental health issues. You don't need outside people for that. You don't need a doctor. You don't need a therapist. You don't need your family. You don't need the military. We are the military. We are your therapists. We are your soul family. We'll take care of you.
Yeah.
It is terrifying.
Mm-hmm. And
Ooh.
if that's not enough, now their new goal, well, new is in their latest announcement,
Oh,
is
wait. Crystal, sorry. 1 second. I know what you're going to get into. I'm so excited to talk about it, but I just really quickly need to talk about Divine Dish.
oh
um,
yes,
Jeff's meal kit. I
I
don't even know,
totally
meal service.
totally
Oh my
forgot about that.
gosh. I mean, he really will try anything to make
He
money, and
will.
he's done a lot of different schemes, but this is a brilliant one. He
That that is
sells
true.
a monthly subscription to get access to all of his exclusive videos and his demonstrations of creating these recipes. They are all sandwiches and hot dogs and extremely fatty, heavy foods where he's just taking videos of himself making a hot dog and charging people hundreds of dollars a month, and they don't get any ingredients. They don't get, like, it is just him telling them what to buy and what to eat. And some of the members gained like 70 pounds in a year.
Yes. I, for the life of me, couldn't find how much it actually costs because I went down a rabbit hole without giving my email and like
Oh, it's so
signing up for
hard.
their newsletter, which I almost did.
Me too.
You
I
couldn't
did a bunch
find
of
anywhere.
their quizzes and stuff, but I just really didn't want to get my email. I
Yeah.
feel like they're gonna come for me, and I I'm good.
Yeah. And like you said, even like Shalia, I think she made a statement about the diet saying that the reason it was so heavy and dense was to ground you so that you can
Hmm.
look internally to find or better your twin flame relationship or find your twin flame relationship. But like looking at the pictures of her before and after he came out with this diet plan, it's drastic. It
Yeah,
she
and
gained a very decent amount of weight between those periods.
I kind of wonder if he did this as a I am not Keith Raniere, this is not Nexium, because it's sort of the opposite of
I
that,
mean,
where
that's
he
true.
was starving people, and Jeff is encouraging them to eat as much as possible. But I think that either way, it's still continuing your control and like exerting more control and keeping people more vulnerable to you because now you're controlling their food, and multiple times a day they're checking in with you, even if it's just mentally, about what they're actually supposed to be eating and doing with their own bodies.
Hmm.
But I do think it's just another form of control, and I wonder if he did it to kind of differentiate himself. I
That,
think he also just doesn't know how to cook.
yeah, well, there's that for sure. But I also wonder if it is, again, like you said, with Nexium, but the opposite. So Keith
Hmm.
Raniere's body preference was a very thin, smaller frame. And also, like, the less you ate, the more like prepubescent your body could become. And I wonder if Jeff has more of an attraction to like a curvier woman, a bigger woman, and that was
Mm.
his way of getting more people into the body type that he likes. Again, taking exactly what Raniere did, just putting it to what his preference is.
It definitely could be that. I definitely saw some clips where he was saying, like, oh, I was worried, as we got older and Shalia gained weight, would I still be just as attracted to her? And he's like, I was actually more attracted to her.
Right.
So maybe he is doing it on purpose, and he is just, once again, Keith Raniere.
They would
But
be
instead
best
of,
friends.
or they would kill each other in the first half hour.
That's true.
Because you can't have two people like that. Like, Keith had his harem of very, very skinny ladies, and Jeff has Shalia, and I don't think a Jeff and a Keith would go well together.
Oh, but they could, if they put their brain together, they could probably come up with some pretty intense but also impressive things.
Probably, but I think the egos would be a huge problem.
Yeah, yeah. Can't have too many in the same room.
It's hard to have two competing gods.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Uh,
All
I'm
right, so
really,
let's get back to the big thing. I think
yes,
you're referring to the third twin flame.
yes, because twin means three
Sometimes it does when it's convenient.
when it's convenient. Um,
Hmm.
so soon they announce that they are pregnant and they are having a child, and that's going to be Princess Christ. And Princess Christ's name is going to be Grace, who is their third twin flame. And the two of them were going to have a divine baby through IVF. And most of the time, and I can't wait to hear about your, because you know more about this than I do, most parents who go to IVF typically have some kind of fertility issue because it's not cheap. It's very expensive, but they claim there was no fertility issues. They were doing IVF because they wanted to make sure that the baby was in the correct bodily identity, and they were so that they could have a girl and her name would be Grace. I didn't think
So
you could do that with IVF. First of all.
so you can do elective IVF. People do it electively, but it's very uncommon for sure. There's usually some sort of medical reason.
Hmm.
And you can select the sex of an embryo.
Really?
In America you can. Yeah. Some countries you cannot, but in America you can. Um but again, that is not usually why that's done, although it is sometimes done for that reason. It usually is more organic than it sounds though, where it's like, let's say I went to do an egg retrieval, I got my eggs fertilized, I ended up with 5 embryos that are all normal, and 3 of them are male embryos and 2 of them are female embryos. I would pick from that batch, and since they're all normal embryos, I get to just pick. Do I want the girl embryo or do I want the boy embryo?
Oh,
So you can do that, but some people discard the other sex, which it's complicated. I think that this would actually be a very interesting topic for a whole episode, but Jeff and Shalia had such a, like, their story did not make sense and it did not hold water, and they contradicted each other all the time.
yes.
So they for years were talking about Grace and how she's coming and she's their golden child and she's going to be their third twin flame, and they were already talking about all of these qualities that she would have and restrictions she would have, and all of the, all the amazing qualities about her years and years before she existed. And then Jeff and Shalea announced that they were doing IVF, and they said publicly that the reason was that they only wanted to have one child and they want it to be a girl. And then that story kind of just kept getting weirder and weirder and making less and less sense. And they ended up having a couple unsuccessful transfers. They had one transfer, which I am not sure, but at some point it seems like they used donor eggs. I don't know if this is the transfer that succeeded, quote, quote, but it seems like they had an ectopic pregnancy. Like, Shalia had a pregnancy that was not in the uterus and had to terminate the pregnancy because it's not viable and it's a life-threatening situation that you could be in.
Yeah.
So
And so
they
what
did not have a lot of luck with IVF.
yeah, but if To my understanding, and again, I don't know pretty much anything about IVF other than like the surface. I didn't think that you could have an ectopic pregnancy with IVF.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, all right.
Very, very annoying, but yes, you can. I mean, it really feels like it should not happen, but it does happen.
That's crazy.
I know.
And
I know. Because you don't push an embryo into the spot that it's going to implant. You introduce it in a catheter and it kind of flies away and it's supposed to implant into the wall,
mm,
but it does not always do that.
so the reason I was so skeptical, other than the fact I didn't think you could, so I learned something new. But I also was like, okay, with the termination of this baby, they actually did a video and they ended up arguing over it
Ugh,
publicly,
I
where
know.
she said it was a topic and they terminated it, and he said it wasn't. And that's when my brain started going, hold on. Because normally they're pretty in sync. They have their arguments publicly, but like this felt deeper. And
Hmm.
I wonder if they found out the gender, found out they were having a boy, and they were like, we can't allow that because they've been saying all of this stuff. And if they had a boy, it would disprove everything. How are you the second coming of Jesus and you can't even protect what baby you're going to have? And I wonder if they found out they were going to have a boy, had to terminate it to keep the idea alive, and then she was like, all right, well, I'm going to go with this angle, and he didn't like the angle that she took.
It could be that. It could also be something like it was a pregnancy of unknown location and they could not confirm that it was ectopic, but it was not developing normally in the uterus. And I could see Jeff, I mean, I don't know him, but I could see him as being like a crazy medicine denier and being like, oh, well, maybe our baby's just, taking a while to develop because it's so special and we should wait it out. Meanwhile, I mean, for Shaleia, it's torture.
Mm-hmm.
There could be multiple different things, but they did not have a child through IVF. They naturally conceived, or they say that they
Yeah.
naturally conceived Grace. And that Jeff wrote this bizarre birth, pregnancy, whatever announcement that I read the whole thing, and it's very bizarre. Um, their pregnancy announcement and her birth story. And he said something so strange in it, like when we were finding out the sex of the baby, we knew that if it was a girl, it was Grace, and we were done having children. And if it was a boy, we'd have to keep trying.
All
And
right,
it's like,
covering that base just in case.
yeah, just in case, because like if we got a boy, like that's just like a random kid that showed up for no reason.
Mhm.
But we'll just have to wait for Grace. I, it is sick. It
Yeah.
is sick and twisted. And I mean, in that pregnancy announcement, he references a lot of fertility issues, which I agree he did not really mention as part of the reason that they were doing IVF. It's also possible, though, that they started doing IVF for gender selection and found out that they had fertility problems, even
Mm.
male factor fertility problems, and maybe they just didn't want to fully explain that, which I would say they shouldn't have to because it's their private medical information, but I mean, you're giving us a lot of information. You might as well just tell us everything at this point.
Yeah, right? But keep in mind, they also were presenting this idea to the group about golden children, which
Ugh.
is basically they have this inevitable plan that they want everyone to live in a commune, basically, long story short. And
How it always
you
ends.
have to have $10,000 a month each month as income to be qualified to have children, round one.
Right. Right.
Everything's about,
In the Twin Flames universe, like you
yeah,
can't just have another job, but you make this kind of money. The
yeah.
couple has to be bringing in 10K through the Twin Flames universe.
And
And they're
then,
only keeping 10% of it, I guess. So
right, exhaust. I can't even imagine how that would work. But
I have
once
no
you
idea.
qualify financially, then you can decide to have children. And if you're unable to have kids, you can get a sperm donor. And
Mm-hmm.
Jeff and Shaleia would pick who your sperm donor was, which, like you said, like wondering about that male fertility is because I wonder what my brain went to is they never mention about female fertility issues. Part of me is like,
Mm.
is because that super feminine role, that's your job as a woman, is to have babies. But the other part of me is like, if they're having these issues, and again, that male, and maybe his fear of it coming out, he had issues, it supports what, well, if you have fertility issues, then we can get you a sperm donor because that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if the issue is not Jeff, fertility wise, then I would not be surprised if the sperm donor he selects
Is Jeff?
for all of these couples is Jeff.
Yeah.
That's very father god. That's very like IVF doctor using his own sperm to create a bunch of super children, golden children, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I could definitely see that because, like we've covered, they've created a lot of couples that are not going to be able to biologically reproduce.
Yep. So they're gonna need something.
Yeah, they're gonna need
And
sperm.
my last icky thing that I want to bring
Ugh,
up is obviously Grace was born. She's a very cute little
mhm,
girl.
ugh,
She's born in 2023. However, they and have been announcing from before she was born that she is going to be celibate and she's not going to have
yes.
any sexual partners except for God when she ascends.
Hmm.
And this made me feel so icky just because Jeff is identifying himself as Father God.
I know. I was thinking that too.
And to me, part of me doesn't want to imagine that that would ever happen. But it also, there's a part of me that he is setting up the ability to have a sexual relationship with his child.
And justify it.
Right.
And he's really lubing everybody up for years and years in advance for that.
Right. Because it's that like
And
the boiling a frog or whatever the saying is, like if you slowly turn
yeah,
it up, if you
yes.
slowly just start dropping hints in 10, 12 years from now, the people, if it still exists, might not even look twice at the fact that this relationship is developing. And it makes me nervous for this little girl.
So I normally would be very hesitant to speculate about whether or not someone is going to be abusive like that. But I think Jeff has already, in my mind, proven himself to be a rapist in his own home.
Right.
So it would not surprise me if he's willing to also violate Grace when she's older. And ah, it's so scary, but I also, call me cynical, but I feel like a lot of these very intense groups that have these religious premises where everyone ends up living on a commune together, it ends in a lot of sexual abuse and child abuse. And I would not be surprised if, because they are still very popular right now.
Yeah.
They have like 50,000 people on their Facebook group. They make so much money, and people are paying them to move into their home to cook and clean and do their errands.
Oh, there's a 4-day retreat coming up in a couple
I
months
saw that.
for six
It's in
hundred and
June.
something dollars.
Should we go?
Kind of want to.
You know what I didn't like about that though? It was not $666.
That surprised
So,
me. I was very surprised
but maybe
at that.
is that because it's 666 and that's like the devil or something?
Maybe. Or maybe it's
Ugh,
after like we have to pay the taxes and the shipping fee.
probably. I mean, it's a 4-day retreat. I think it was $649. I mean, I'm sure that doesn't include anything, and you probably have to pay for your own food and whatever. But I would think it would be more, to be
It
honest.
is kind of a deal for them considering the price of everything else.
But I think that they bought because Jeff bought like a huge event space in Michigan,
Hmm.
and I think it's there that they're having the retreat. So maybe they're not paying for I don't know. I mean, who knows what the conditions are that they're going to be staying in. The pictures looked beautiful, but they also looked very Google image stock photo.
Right.
It was like pictures of charcuterie boards and pictures of beautiful trees and like sunsets, and it's like clearly did not take these pictures. Like they're just stock photos from Google.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
have no idea what's going to happen at that retreat. But they do a lot of in-person meetups. Most of their stuff is online, but they do in-person meetups, and sometimes they perform spiritual marriages or whatever for people, harmonious unions in front of the crowd at their events. It's
Yeah.
very beautiful.
Well, if they
Ugh.
ever come locally, we'll have to pop in and say hi.
Sure, sure. But are you going to be the masculine or the feminine in our twin flame relationship?
Oh, I don't
Because
know.
we have to commit to the bit. Like,
You're
one of
right.
us has to go full masculine and one of us has to go full feminine. I don't want them to know that we're fakers.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do some research about our what we need, what each requires.
Yeah. Because I'm unclear, honestly, about a lot of things. From, but it changes to fit whatever convenient situation they need.
That is
Just
true.
like when people like when their first twin flame doesn't work out and Jeff and Shaleia find them a second twin flame, it's like, okay, but I thought this was the person you were destined to be with, and that God told you guys specifically that that's the person they're destined to be with. So how could you have been wrong?
Right. That's
I
where
don't know.
things just there's so many moments that just don't add up, but like, just keep talking and eventually you'll explain it away.
Yeah, just some small holes in that logic, but I mean, I really enjoyed them, and I enjoyed all the different documentaries that have been made, and looking at their website and reading all of the articles that Jeff writes. It's been very interesting.
Yeah. And it'll be curious to watch them as they develop, if they kind of stay in the same realm or if they're going to try to continue to expand. Because at this point, they don't have anyone else really to steal from, I feel. Like they're founded and now they're going to have to be creative. So part of me thinks they're probably just going to stay the way they are.
Hmm. Well, I think that what their next plan is that I saw somewhere that he wants to get a bunch of trailers for
Yeah.
this large area of land that he purchased and have everyone live
They're commune.
commune style. Yeah, and then those people would just produce all the golden children, and then the golden children will grow up and be twin flames with each other. So I think that's the next like 20 to 30 years that they have worked out.
Mm, yeah.
I don't know how well it's gonna go, but that's the plan.
Well, if they do anything crazy, we'll do a follow up for anyone. We'll give everybody an update if anything crazy happens.
Definitely. All right. Well, very nice chatting with you, and we will hit our next mother very soon.
Yes. Have a good one.
You too.